Hello, everyone. This is Kripa Anand, and welcome to the She and Success podcast, powered by She and Success Business Magazine, a platform dedicated to spotlighting the voices, strategies, and journeys of women leaders and entrepreneurs who are shaping Canada's business and policy landscape. Today, we are exploring the global engine of the Canadian tech ecosystem. In 2026, the most successful startups aren't just local players. They are built by immigrant founders with global roots who understand how to validate, launch, and scale across borders. Joining us today is Miryam Lazarte, founder and CEO of global startups Accelerator. Originally from Colombia, Miriam has supported over 300 tech companies, helping several reach unicorn status. She is also the general partner at GSA Ventures, a fund specifically investing in immigrant led tech. She is here to talk about what founders need to understand about investment, growth beyond the MVP, and the true role of accelerators. So, before further ado, let's welcome this special guest. Miriam, welcome to the podcast. Such a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to be here.
Now, Miriam, I'm so excited for this conversation today because this is much needed. Many early stage founders believe that securing a check is the first major milestone of a startup's life. So go ahead and debunk this myth, and instead, what should founders focus on before seeking funding? Go ahead.
Yeah, so traction. That's the short answer. And that's an answer that many people know, they have here. And sometimes it's difficult to translate into actuals. So having said that, it's very excited to receive the first check, but getting to the first check is the most complex situation that many companies have to face when they are actually raising capital. So before getting into that, there is a lot of preparation. I keep repeating myself in many places saying that pre-seed fund is the most important of the rounds that they are going to have. If they screw up, sorry for the word, that one,
No, yeah.
there is not, seed round, there is no Series A round, there is no subsequent round. So it's really important to pay attention to what is the structure, the real structure that they require to receive funds,
Mm-hmm.
and the legal consequences of receiving funds. Having said that, nothing of that matters if they don't have, customers, user interactions.
Mm-hmm.
The conversation comes more difficult with investors without that.
No, that's very, very smart way to look at it because focusing on, building a business rather than just a pitch deck, it ensures that you don't mess up your first round with the wrong terms. Now, Miriam, let's explore how startups transition, from building a product to owning a market because there's a long journey
Oh,
between
yeah.
both these things, right?
Mhm.
Um, so, from your extensive experience, what mistakes do founders make after building an MVP? And towards the end, what actually drives their real traction at the end of the day?
Yeah, what drives, I'm going to start with the last question. What
Mm-hmm.
drives really the traction at the end is customers, somebody that really wants your product. It's nothing else, than people being excited about what you have. And there's nothing better than have customers passing the word to others.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best marketing you can get anyway.
Yes,
Uh,
word of mouth, organic.
it's organic. I mean, of course, they have to do a lot of marketing, but at the same time,
Yeah.
the good work kind of goes very fast, and
Yes.
people get excited to see, a solution that
Yeah.
many other people are
Yeah.
using and is serving to kill, a pain
Yes.
that they are having, right?
There's also that trust and credibility factor that gets added. So great there.
Yeah, I mean, the many mistakes we have seen comes basically from assumptions. Assumptions from last businesses, because sometimes some of the founders that we deal with, this is their second, third, or fourth company, and they come with some history from the first companies, and Besides that, you have some learning, you get also into assumptions pretty fast, right?
Mhm.
These days, it's very difficult to get into assumptions, especially with the speed of AI, the speed of what we think right now is happening in the markets. And it's becoming more unpredictable for companies to actually see what, what was working in the past or not working in the past
Yeah.
will happen again, in the market. So validating those assumptions are super useful. uh, when we mention this to the funders, they normally get like, yeah, we know, but we also want to see the money, and no, like everyone wants to see the money. We
Yeah.
want to see the money, but at the same time, you gotta, build a little bit of patience on building up correctly the product, and kind of mitigate the risk of getting out of business because you got your assumptions incorrect.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've highlighted some great points. Transitioning from a technical MVP to, a market-ready solution is, at the end of the day, what separates a hobby project from a scalable company. Now, Miriam, let's discuss what founders should really expect from accelerators. So, for all the listeners, from a layman's perspective, firstly, what should they expect from accelerator right now in the market, and when exactly do accelerators, add that value at the stage of the business that you are in? Right? When do you know that now is the right fit?
Yeah, for this answer, I'm going to be a little bit tough even with ourselves.
Mhm.
Accelerators have got wrong many things during many years, including us. I have to say, we have been wrong many times.
Mhm.
The approach that personally we have taken is the approach of, me or my employees being founders or past founders and being in the shoes of the startups. So we always wanted to kind of like, have some empathy over the startups or the transition that they are getting into
Mhm.
growing companies. But I have to say, many accelerators are built and run by people that never have run a company. That put us in a very difficult position because sometimes how you get to advise a company when you haven't done it yourself, right?
Yeah.
In our case, I wouldn't say that we that was not our position, but we still got it wrong many times.
Mhm.
And what you should expect about accelerators is that, accelerators are not going to do the work for you. Nobody is going to do the work for you. No
Yes.
consultant, nobody else is going to do the work for you. So you should come with very specific goals, I will say. And 2 years ago, I mentioned in a collision conference event, and the last collision conference event, that the current model that accelerators have is dying, and I believe that today more than ever. So I don't believe that accelerators are there to provide structures, not provide
Mhm.
lectures. That's not anymore the case. I feel like the case have gone towards provide the support for the startups to actually get funded, provide the network because they need the network,
Mhm.
and provide fractional services perhaps, but this is not anymore about programs or structuring or lectures. Those
Right.
like you can get online.
Exactly. Uh, Again, a great reminder. And before we go any further, here's a special message for all of the listeners, specifically for all the immigrant founders and tech dreamers watching. In 2026, Canada is your launchpad, but the world is your market. Don't join an accelerator just for the badge or just for the sake of it. Join for the structure, the due diligence and the pathway to global VCs. If you have an MVP today, stop waiting for permission. Move forward, towards your first customers now.
Mhm.
Traction is the only language that investors truly speak. Use the tools at global startups to build something that isn't just Canadian competitive, but globally unstoppable. Now, coming back to you, Miriam, I completely agree with you. Choosing an accelerator for the right reasons, it provides that structural foundation needed to attract institutional capital when you're at that stage. Now, moving ahead in the conversation, let's look at how Canadian startups can expand into global markets. Um, I'd love for you to, explain this in a little more detail. What I mentioned about Canada being your launch pad, but the global world being your market. And why should Canadian startups expand globally, right? How can they prepare for it? And also for an entrepreneur, how do they shift this mindset that I need to expand beyond Canada, North America, and into the world? So many questions for you, but go ahead.
Oh, good. Like, I feel like, the mindset of the Canadian entrepreneur has been always like, let's go to US like many other companies, right? We just received a big slap in the face last year, and I think like this was of course, a wake up call for many Canadians. I've been working all my life, while I've been in Canada to help Canadians to find new markets because I feel like, we do have a world of people outside of North America. And it's a world of people that are adopters. Many of them are early adopters. One of the biggest reasons, for example, people are struggling in mature markets to adopt AI solutions. Many people can produce AI solutions these days,
Hmm.
but the adoption of those AI solutions have become one of the most critical components for companies to continue fighting in the market. And we have seen a kind of a race of companies getting into AI. I think like everyone has seen the buzz,
The
right?
race, yeah.
Yeah, but who adopts those solutions? Who pays for them? And why I should pay for them? Well, emerging markets has a good record of early adoption of, for example, AI solutions. In some emerging markets, that percentage, of adoption goes up to 40-45% of the population. While in mature markets like Canada, US, Europe, the adoption is less than 13%.
Hmm.
So there you have like a very good reason if you have an AI company, for example, and you really need to validate, like
Yeah,
going to an early emerging market will probably help to do that validation. And there are markets that are so massive, and I mean, many of those markets also have way stronger and advanced technology than Canada and the US.
of
We're
course.
talking about fintech, for example, financial services.
Yeah.
Canada is pretty much behind. It's a Yeah, there are many reasons for why Canadians should look at other markets. In particular, I will say because the early adoption is there.
It's funny how, as an entrepreneur, when you're thinking about business, your mind just can't expand beyond a certain geographical location, right? When as an entrepreneur, the entire world should be for you to capture. That should be the spirit and the light and the spark within you, right? That was very informational and a great perspective there, Miriam. I think looking beyond the border, it definitely allows founders to, tap into massive emerging markets like Latin America, with over 800 million consumers. And as you said, Canada right now is towards the bottom of the list when we talk about adoption of AI specifically. So definitely the world is your canvas, all the entrepreneurs. Finally, let's explore how global events like the World Cup create, new business opportunities. So please go ahead and explain this from a cultural, a community perspective also, that how can the Toronto tech ecosystem leverage the World Cup for global growth? Go ahead.
Sure. So that's a really, it's a funny situation that I've seen for the World Cup because, coming from Latin America, I'm not a soccer fan per se.
Uh-huh.
No, but my family is and my friends are,
Okay.
and I know how passionate and amazingly involved they get into soccer. This is not just in Latin America. This is just Africa. This is Europe. It's kind of
Yes.
like a big deal for the
Yeah.
world.
Love for sports, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, and in particular, that type of a sport is kind of like massive, you know.
Yeah.
So every time that I open my mouth about the World Cup here, you know, people are like, "Oh, but we don't know if people are going to come," and I'm like, "You don't know what you're talking about. This is, it's going to be a really big influx of people coming up, right?"
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
people actually trying to get into the market. When people are traveling for sports, and this is one of the misconceptions that I've seen in many markets, is that people travel for sports. They just don't travel because of the luxury of the sport and being just, you know, inserted in the sport matches that happen. They also travel because of business. And
Mm, yeah.
I don't know if you have seen how much it cost a ticket for the World Cup. Cost a lot.
A lot, yes. So while you're, going there, you might as well do some of the other things around that area and, manage that into your calendar. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
And then many of them are actually entrepreneurs or are
yeah.
investors because they are
Mm,
the ones that have the money to actually spend and the time to spend on these kind of things.
mm,
So what we are kind of facing in a few months is something like is a life changing for the city in a
yeah,
way that we are going to have an influx of people from everywhere that
yeah.
are coming for this particular sport, and they are going to spend the time here in the city and see what Canada has for them more than, you know, a soccer game. So that's
Exactly.
my that's my point here.
No, it depends on us on how we make the best use of that opportunity and get in front of them, direct engagement opportunity with them, and capitalizing on these global events. It definitely turns a sporting moment into a long term economic opportunity for the entire region. So thank you so much for educating all of our listeners about that, Miriam.
Oh, no, I'm pretty sure there are many soccer fans in the
Yeah,
audience.
yeah,
We are putting our annual conference during the World Cup precisely
yeah.
because we know the opportunity, and we are putting John Ruffalo and so many other people coming up because we want to show the best of the best in Toronto for the
Yeah.
visitors that are coming here, you know, and looking at Toronto like as a potential partner for business as
No,
well.
of course, that's not just a smart positioning, but also a very strategic positioning that you are doing. So again, kudos to you for even thinking out of the box for that. I'm loving this conversation, Miriam, and definitely we'd love to have you back. But for now, before we let you go, if there's one final piece of advice that you have specifically for immigrant founders who are starting with just an MVP, what would you tell them and why?
Yeah, I will say that, you know, structure your company from the beginning to receive money. It will be more important than ever. So
Hmm.
just think that from the beginning and, you know, keep going, man. Like, you know, nobody likes unsolicited advice.
Yeah.
You know, we are not here for that. But the only thing that I said is that you will need money, you will need to be competitive. So structure the company to be investable.
That is a great reminder that your immigrant roots are often your greatest entrepreneurial strength. Miriam, it has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise.
Thank you, Kripa. It has been a pleasure.
All right, that was Miryam Lazarte from Global Startups Accelerator, a masterclass in how to build investment ready, globally competitive tech companies from a Canadian base. To all the listeners, thank you so much for tuning into the She and Success podcast, powered by She and Success Business Magazine. Be sure to subscribe for more expert insights and visit sheandsuccess.ca for more resources. And lastly, a very special thank you to our exclusive shipping partner, Later, for their ongoing commitment to supporting women entrepreneurs and helping them build, grow, and lead successful businesses across Canada. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Kripa Anand signing off.